Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my new video where we are going to go over 5 tips that every single Darius player needs to know. Now, if you're new to my channel, my name is Wolfit. I do educational content, I do tips videos and guide videos, and with this series, I try my best to help out those players that main the particular champion that I will be covering. I'm going to be kind of doing a little bit different tips, and not really kind of like the cookie cutter stuff, because Darius is an older champion, so I'm going to try and kind of dive into things that are just kind of a little bit smaller, a little bit different. But I would really appreciate anyone that plays a lot of Darius themselves. Comment down below your favorite tips, as well as if you guys have any feedback or critique, or if you want to see a particular champion next. I try and read every single comment and reply, so love to hear your thoughts on what you guys would like to see next. So if you're curious about my experience, peaked at Diamond 2 promos, and I've played against a lot of Darius's, and I have played a lot of Darius, playing thousands and thousands of games in the top lane, so I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of it. So with that out of the way, let's get into tip number 1. Alright, and for tip number 1, I just want to cover a couple of things with your build that I think you should really be switching around depending on what you are playing against, because I think that he is very good in the fact that he can just kind of build for game state. He isn't something like Jax that needs to go to the core of Triforce and Shojin and Sterix. How you can play out Darius is very different. So when you are looking to play Darius, Triforce is a absolutely amazing item on him. It gives him movement speed, which is huge. It gives him a bit of mana, gives him cooldown reduction. He has great attack damage, so his proc is going to do a lot of damage, and the rage passive is very nice. But the one trap that I see some Dariuses fall into is they're getting behind in lane and they are still building into Triforce. As you can see here, Triforce is going to be a very expensive item, and it has just a little bit of clunky components. When you're coming back in a lane and you just have a mana crystal, it's going to feel kind of bad. So what I want you guys to start doing is, when you are doing well, or maybe going even, and you're just CSing really well because you have lane presence on Darius, you should be looking at Triforce. But say you're just getting really beat up in a lot of the trades, you're losing somehow on Darius, or there's maybe a ranged champion that's denying you a lot, how you want to look to play out the game is probably going to be a little bit different, because you're not going to just be this unstoppable juggernaut. You're going to have limited resources, and this is where Black Cleaver can be the superior pick. So kind of judge on how you're doing in your lane state and how often you're getting ganked, and kind of deal with that accordingly. Also, what is great with Black Cleaver is it amplifies the damage of your other carries. If you have an ADC that's doing well, say you're going 0-2 in lane, you're struggling a bit, you're getting ganked a lot, but you have a Draven in the bot lane that's like 4-0. So Black Cleaver is going to be huge here, because you're going to increase the damage of your ADC. It's not going to be as much overall flat damage as the Triforce, and you will eventually get the Triforce. The spike might just be too late and you aren't the main carry of your team. So look, kind of choose between these two items depending on the game state. Another thing I really want to talk about is, with Darius not having any mobility outside of just getting increased movement speed, tenacity is at a really big premium when the enemy team has a lot of CC. So things like Merc Treads, things like the Resolve Unflinching, or things like Legend Tenacity are very strong when you are playing Darius. Next up, I think that Last Stand is probably one of the best runes you can grab on him, because of your ability to kite people out and then get a big heal and get those really nice Q hits, because they're trying to chase you, and it's very easy to land the outer blade a Blade's Edge on your Q. You are just going to be doing massive damage when you get that Last Stand proc. Next up, if the enemy has a lot of burst, you want to be looking at anti-burst items like a Sterix Gauge, or maybe even a Guardian's Angel, or if they're just super AP heavy, you might even be able to look at a Ma. I don't really like running Ma too much on him, but these can be viable options. Next up, if you are getting just kited out constantly, things like a Dead Man's Plate and a Randuin's Omen can fit extremely well into your kit, because it's going to increase your ability to chase down the enemy and then also give you a extra slow. Now, you can be building more offensive options in these slots. I think that the Triforce, Black Cleaver, and Sterix are pretty much needed when you aren't playing Darius, but everything else is kind of subject to change depending on the enemy team. If the enemy team isn't respecting your healing, things like Spirit Visage can be really really strong. So that's going to kind of wrap up my spiel on just the different runes you can take. Also, just one last thing with the second wind. I really like the Revitalize because it increases your healing, and then with the second wind you would take that against someone that's going to poke you a lot, like a Gangplank, and then if you're playing against something that's looking to all in you, like a Camille or a Yasuo or an Urgot, you would want to take something like Bone Poison. So that will wrap up tip number 1, and if you have any questions about different builds for different game situations, I really like kind of problem solving for people and helping them out in that regard, so make sure to comment down below. Alright, and getting into tip number 2, I want to talk about something that I see that is very common for low elo Dariuses to not utilize, and very common for higher elo Dariuses. They start using this quite frequently. I see a lot of low elo Dariuses, or maybe some newer players to it, they only look at their apprehend as an offensive ability that they are looking to set up their Q combo on. But how you want to approach the apprehend, even though it is a little bit of a longer cooldown, this is actually a very strong kite mechanic. You know that it's a little bit counterintuitive because it just forces people into you, so you might not think of it as something, hey, this might be able to help me get away, but the extremely strong slow of the 40% is going to enable you to create some distance when you are looking to do that. As you can see with the W, they are in the E, they're both 1 second slows. Obviously the W is going to be a lot stronger, but if you are, say, getting ganked, which is going to happen so much because a lot of Dariuses are being are pushing in constantly and trying to be a lane bully, or maybe freezing and drawing jungle aggro that way, how you want to look at your E is it is an AoE slow to get away from both of the enemies. So if you have two people kind of chasing you down the lane, and you know that they can catch up to you, you might want to look for a apprehend and then a Q as you look to run away. So what this is going to do is they are going to be forced to follow you if they want to continue the gank while they're slowed. Also, if they want to continue down a straight line, the quickest way to you, they are going to have to eat a Q, which is going to allow you to get a little bit more healing off in the trade. So always look at this E as the most important cooldown on Darius, as you probably have already seen before. When you play against something like a Teemo, you have extremely low threat when your apprehend is down, and then you have pretty strong threat on him when your apprehend is up. So do not let this ability get baited out in very poor situations where maybe you're just looking for a super quick trade when you do not know where the enemy jungler is and you assume that he is on the top side of the map. So again, look at your apprehend as a offensive tool, obviously, to set up your really strong combos with Darius and to catch people, but also as a really strong defensive tool that allows for an AoE slow and to create distance and set up your Q heal if they want to chase in a straight line. And that will wrap up tip number 2 for Darius. Okay, and jumping into tip number 3. Now, I know I've covered this in a couple other videos, but this is extremely important for Darius in particular. And this is what you should be looking to do when you have your lane pushed under the enemy tower. There are a couple different options. Obviously, if they're low HP and you can get a combo off, look to dive. That would be your first priority if you are enabled in that situation. But what's going to happen commonly is they might be able to beat you under the tower with a quick trade and the kind of the extra damage that the tower is going to do. So how you want to look to take advantage of this time is to, first of all, the lowest risk would be just getting some deep wards in the enemy jungle. Maybe a ward, something like right here, that is going to show them pathing from here to here, and is also going to give you a little bit of just time to react if you know that you're getting ganked. And then just popping out and consuming their blast cone is going to be a great way to do it. Also, you can look to grab the scuttler, and you can also look to grab the fruit. So always look to take advantage of your downtime when the enemy tower is chewing up your CS and they're not attacking the enemy CS. You are going to just be trying to capitalize your lead that you have on Darius to the other parts of the map. Such a common thing I hear from top laners is a common complaint. They're like, hey, I just have no effect on the map. Every game seems like a coin flip. This is how you affect the map and you snowball your lead to enemy lanes. The number one thing you can look to do if you're feeling pretty strong on Darius, the your lane is pushed into the enemy tower, is waiting on the buffs for the enemy jungler. When you are a solo laner, you are a lot higher level, so you are going to be better in the all-ins, and they are going to be completing a jungle item early in the game, and you are going to have more raw combat stats. Also with your passive, you should not be losing any of these fights. Obviously, the enemy laner is going to be pinging, but if you're in anything from bronze to, I mean, even low diamond, junglers aren't going to respect just one missing solo laner when they assume that their top laner can come help if you are getting invaded. So the reason why invading is so important with Darius is because being able to set up your combo from Fog of War is, first of all, absolutely huge, because you can start it off with just an auto and you do not have to use your E to gap close on them. So affecting the enemy jungler and maybe stealing away a buff or killing them is going to have a widespread effect on the whole map, because if you put your jungler behind, or if you even ping your jungler to come and help you invade, it's going to be even better, because it will put your jungler ahead, their jungler behind. Your bot lane knows that they can take fights. Your jungler is going to be able to counter gank very effectively because they're going to be ahead, and it is just going to have a really strong effect on the map. So whenever you are playing Darius, please translate the lead that you have in the laning phase, whether it be by diving, whether it be by attacking the enemy jungler, getting vision for your team, or by even roaming into the mid lane with all of your CC, with your slow and your grab. So if you have any questions about just kind of rotation timings, you can let me know. And then also control wards are huge for Darius. Use that extra gold that you're able to attain by having lane priority and making sure that you are not being spotted and gonna get collapsed upon. So that was gonna wrap up this tip, and yeah. Alright, and getting into tip number 4, I want to talk a little bit just about kind of my previous videos on my channel, and the reason why I kind of saved Darius to a little bit later in my channel. I think that he is a kind of a trap for low elo players, in the respect that he is very easy to lane with. He's like Gangplank. He's very easy to lane with, but he struggles a bit in team fighting because he can get kited out extremely easy, and he's a bit harder to execute, and then you end up blaming your team. Hey, I did really well in lane. Why didn't we win this game? It's because you aren't translating your lead into team fights effectively, or I mean, obviously there are just some unwinnable games, but Darius is one of those key kind of lane bullies that it's really hard to translate your lead into team fights if you're not just grossly ahead. So how you want to look to take on team fights, obviously it is extremely strong to get flanks off in against the enemy team. So whenever possible, look for a flank on Darius, and obviously things like Ghost and things like just getting a really quick reset by using all of your cooldowns, like flashing in and getting a full combo on an ADC, and then getting your passive going and the resets going on your ultimate is going to be extremely key. It is also going to be a little bit more difficult as you're going to be bursted out by a bunch more people, and the only kind of defensiveness you have is just your high max HP that he gets per level, and then also the healing that you get from your Q. You do not have like an Alistar ult or a big shield that you can utilize, so you are going to struggle against all this max HP damage that Riot just keeps throwing into the game, which is really annoying and just really an overall anti-bruiser sentiment. So how you want to look to take out team fights is by approaching from an unexpected way. The last thing you want to be doing in every single team fight is popping your Ghost, being a frontliner, and just trying to run at the enemy carries. This is going to be a very extremely predictable playstyle that can be countered really easily, even just by one champion. A late game Thresh with a high amount of CDR can keep you CC'd for almost the duration of the entire team fight if he plays it out correctly, and you do not have much tenacity overall in your setup. You can just really struggle to get those resets and get those early kills. So running just straight at the backline is going to be a struggle, but I would recommend 2 different playstyles. So the first one is going to be setting up on flanks and getting at backline access in that way. The second way you can look to play out team fights is to not overextend into the enemy backline, but more playing a front to back team fight where you can get your passive stacked up on the enemy tanks and look to just shred them down. As you are Darius, you are a huge anti-tank threat. You can look to overall just win front to back team fights. And the reason why I recommend this kind of playstyle is one thing you really want to keep in mind is you want to stay within the threat range and kind of the influence range of your ADC. If you overextend into the backline, you are going to get into situations where it's a 2v1 or a 3v1 and you do not have much backup because your team is being zoned by their front line. So look to play out the front to back team fights and get up your passive and then roll over the front line into the back line, because Darius is one of those champions like Urgot or Cho'Gath that can play front to back team fights quite well. So that will wrap up this tip for team fighting. I can't cover everything with team fighting, but if you have any questions, you can hit me up in the comments down below, and let's get into the final tip. Alright, and jumping into the final tip, I want to talk about just a little bit about the timings that you want to get down packed in your head when you're looking to play Darius. And the first one is the Q delay when you are doing Decimate. Just get a really good understanding and make sure that you have your Q into your flash down packed and getting the blade part of it hitting the enemy champion. This is going to be very important for setting up kills and just landing really big, nice heals. So just having that right when the damage comes off and having that good understanding of the timing is going to be extremely important. And then also just getting used to the fact that you can auto attack cancel with your W is going to be extremely important, because it's going to add to your overall DPS and your ability to get to your maximum damage ultimate as soon as possible. So just kind of getting that down in your head, like just make sure you're auto W. Auto W. I know it might be something small, but I'd see a lot of low elo Dariuses whenever I play on a Smurf just for fun. They are not auto attack canceling with their W, and it's just a really big thing that you should not be doing. Next up, I want to talk about your E. As you can see, the cast time right there, when you press E, it says apprehend and that bar comes up. This sometimes, knowing the delay on your apprehend can be the difference between landing it and getting that kill and missing out if you do not have a good understanding, particularly if they're at max range and they are a good kiting champion. You really want to get that timing down pack. So just throwing out maybe 40 or 50 apprehends to get that, just the timing down really good in the practice tool can be beneficial when you are looking to pick up Darius. Next up, I want to talk about kind of the ranges and the distances that you have when you're playing Darius. You have a relatively low range pretty much on every single spell. I think the longest range is what, your E, and then into your Q, into your R, and then into your just your basic auto attacks when you are playing Darius. So just play around with the ranges. Don't look at the reticule, and just get a really good understanding of what the max E range is when you are playing Darius, and it's going to help out quite a bit. And then, as we covered earlier, definitely the Q ranges are going to be really important for landing the blade, and then just setting up your Qs with the different slows that are in your kit with the E and the W, and those are the things that you can just look to practice in the practice tool, and I think can help out anyone that isn't just like a Darius master and has been playing that for a lot. So that's gonna wrap up my video, guys. I hope I helped you out. If you have any questions, comments, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below, and as always, guys, take it easy.